Campi Flegrei's alarming escalation that is happening. After that massive earthquake swarm with the 4.4 magnitude earthquake, the second largest ever recorded at that super volcano, near over 6 million people that live right on top of this volcano. No, it has continued with a 3.1, a 2.5. So at least going on for 3 days now. I will show you the recent epicenters and earthquakes in a minute. The land rise has accelerated again. The bradyseism as a whole is accelerating again, but the land is rising now at 2 centimeters per month from 1.5 centimeters per month, which was already an accelerated rate. So it's alarming, and because of that, state of emergency has been declared. We will get into that in this video. Welcome to my channel, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will see what this unfolding crisis in Italy at the supervolcano Campi Flegrei means for the residents, means for the world potentially. And after this powerful magnitude 4.4 earthquake that just happened on May 13th, the Italian government took the unprecedented step declaring a national state of emergency that is valid for 12 months, and then it can be extended for another 12 months. But the story doesn't end here. There was quite a bit of resistance from the mayors of Pozzuoli, because tourist season is approaching, and they were very worried. Well, if there's a state of national emergency declared, would you go on vacation there right on top of a super volcano that could cause 100 feet wave tsunami, but also a devastating eruption? Or best case scenario, just the earthquakes with buildings that are not up to date, with codes that could crumble, that could collapse. After the 4.4, people were out on the streets sleeping in their cars again, and it was advised even to do so. Over 90 people were displaced from their homes by the officials. 19 families were evacuated because their homes deemed to be unstable. But even after that, guys, it gets more unsettling. This crisis is evolving. Within 24 hours of that major tremor, the 4.4 magnitude earthquake, they call it a second seismic swarm hit it, but in my opinion, it's still the same seismic swarm, because it's been like, basically we are approaching over 150, close to 200 earthquakes now, if we count from May 12th till May 15th. So before we go into more details, let's have a look at the current earthquake list. So you see there's the 4.4 that was on May 13th, and that was followed by a 3.5, 1.9, 1.6, and then 3.3 again, 2.7, and then the next day 3.1 again, 2.5. And I want to point something out, because I read in the comments many people were like, clickbait, fear mongering, a 4.4, that's not a high earthquake. Well, these guys are all mixing up tectonic driven earthquakes with volcanic earthquakes. Of course, a 4.4 is not a big deal in California or somewhere else, but on top of a volcano, on top of a magma chamber, these are not tectonic earthquakes that we're seeing here in that list. I want to make that clear. Before the last volcanic eruption in Iceland, 2.7 was already alarming. So you have to really do your homework. I tell you guys, 4.4 is substantial in terms of what that tells us about the volcano that's awakening, that's sending magma to the top underneath. Now the land is rising more, the pressure is building up more. So this is the list, but I also want to show you how this looks on the map. But quickly, it starts on the 12th with a 1.8, and then you see it leads up with a 1.2 to the 4.4. So this is another big swarm with several significant big earthquakes, and that's why they have declared this state of emergency. That allows them to speed up things that they need to do. They're still talking only about seismic upgrades. They're avoiding the topic that many seasoned scientists of the INGV are also saying you have to also prepare for a volcanic eruption if you want to hear it or not. But they're only talking about the earthquake risk, buildings collapsing and stuff like this. It's still a little bit, I get it. Yes, tourism, building values, the whole industry there. It is a problem, yes. So they're kind of tempering themselves, saying, yeah, if we upgrade everything seismically, we'll be okay. I don't think so. And if you look at the maps, it shows you, gosh, how many earthquakes. So this map shows you all the earthquakes since 2023, and the red ones are the recent ones. And you see the big bubble there, that's the recent one, the 4.4 in basically just in the sea at the port of Pozzuoli. And even if we go back to only like 24, 25 or 25, it's a significant number of earthquakes, and they're all located. Basically, you can't even see the name Pozzuoli on the map anymore. That's why Giuseppe Mastro Lorenzo, a seasoned INGV scientist, is begging to at least evacuate Pozzuoli. At least evacuate Pozzuoli, but many scientists would rather evacuate a larger circle, roughly 700,000 people. But nothing is happening. So they have declared a national state of emergency, but they're still not increasing the alert level of the volcano. It still remains at yellow. It's kind of surprising, but we know the economic factors, and they have discussed this in their meeting just today, plays a big role. And it's kind of like, is it shocking or no? The mayors of Pozzuoli and Baccioli, of the areas that are mostly affected by this, they were basically mostly refusing the declaration of a national state of emergency because they want the tourists to come. Yes, without the money from the tourists, the situation gets even worse, unless the government would do something like they did in Iceland. And I know this is difficult here because it's such a bigger area, so many more people. But they would have to force them to evacuate and pay them out for their buildings and relocate them somewhere else. It would create a ghost town. I know, it's a weird imagination. So how they call it the second swarm after the 4.4, for me this is a continuous swarm, but it's the second day, let's agree on that, shook the same densely populated region, including the communities of Pozzuoli, Baccioli, and parts of western Naples. And these are towns that are built directly inside or on the edge of the ancient supervolcanic caldera. And people fled their homes in the middle of the night. Parents kept their children home from school. Schools were closed. Trains stopped. The fear was not just shaking walls. The fear was also deep inside the residents, especially not only of what's currently happening, but also of what might come next. And one headline that we read in an Italian newspaper today was a restless giant supervolcano beneath Naples. Yeah, that's a fact. That's what it is. And then Mauro Di Vito, the director of the Vesuvius Observatory, confirmed that all of these quakes are very shallow. That's why you feel them so strongly. Mostly less than 3 kilometers deep. And that is indicating activity within the caldera's hydrothermal system. And then he clarified, we are not seeing magma rise yet. He's always super careful. And then he said, but we are seeing stress, deformation, and pressurization consistent with bradyseism. This sounds again like, oh, that's not so bad. It's just the bradyseism. But what is causing the bradyseism? That is the volcano. That is magma. And surprisingly, they confirmed magma at shallow depth, only like 3.9 kilometers in recent studies. So what is building up the pressure? What is heating up the water in the hydrothermal system? What is heating up these fumaroles? What is causing the excessive CO2 emissions? What is causing all this? Well, it's not water, and if it's heated water, what is heating it? So I said, let's pause on that word, bradyseism, because this is the slow uplift or subsidence, uplift in our case, of the ground caused by pressure from gases, fluids underground. And in the 1980s, where there was a potential magma intrusion happening, magma was getting out of the magma chamber underneath Campi Flegrei, but it didn't make it to the top. So bradyseism has forced the evacuation of over 30,000 people from Pozzuoli. Nothing happened then, thankfully. It was just an intrusion, but since then people do not want to evacuate anymore. But now the ground is rising again, and it's faster than it's rising faster than it has in decades. So according to also the INGV's latest bulletin, the uplift has accelerated to over 20 millimeters per month. That is a rate that we have seen shortly after this massive earthquake swarm. In March, it went up to 3 centimeters per month, but then it went down to 2 and 1.5. But basically, an escalation like this hasn't been seen since the 1980s, 1984, when that magma intrusion happened. And with each earthquake swarm, we have to make clear, the crust becomes more fractured. Because if these rocks are being moved and shaken all the time, this gives way for magma to reach to the top. And I just made a video about a study that was surprising for the scientists because they didn't expect that. They found a weak spot of the volcano where the crust is so weak that magma might find a way to the top, like the Achilles heel of the volcano. So this makes it even easier for magma to come to the top. And the whole caprock layer that keeps the lid on has only a third of its strength left that it had in 1984. So it's definitely, the crisis is worse than 1984. And Italy's civil protection official Agostino Miozzo didn't mince his words. He said, quote, "We are walking a very fine line. The possibility of an eruption is still low, but the cost of underestimating it would be catastrophic." There you go. The Minister of Civil Protection, Nello Musumeci, said on national television today, "We declared the state of emergency not because an eruption is imminent, but because the region has reached a critical threshold where infrastructure, public health, and civil safety must be actively protected." Well, this is a volcano, so in order to actively protect them, you would have to evacuate them, in my opinion. But it is what it is. That declaration was made official on May 13, has unlocked now emergency funds and accelerated seismic retrofitting. Civil protection tents have been quietly positioned in various locations. Local governments are preparing more evacuation plans just in case. So what has triggered, how they call it, the second swarm after the first? Or what has caused this swarm to continue for so long? A geophysicist from the INGV and president of the INGV, Carlo Doglioni, explained that today. And his words, quote, are, "This sequence is a sign of accumulated stress. Each quake releases some strain, but it can also set off further movement in the fractured crust. The shallow nature makes the shaking more intense." Yeah, interesting, but we're not talking about tectonic earthquakes here. So the officials of the INGV are never talking about the elephant in the room, it feels. Only there are other scientists that are also in leading positions. They talk about the potential danger of an eruption, even if it's just a small one or a phreatic eruption. So yeah, we've just seen another 3.1 that also struck very close to the surface and was felt as far as central Naples this time. And this swarm on the second day was not isolated. It came on top of the previous 4.4 shock and dozens of larger aftershocks. So as people noticed these earthquakes quite intense. Social media was filled with photos of cracked walls, fallen bricks, terrified residents camping in cars. Local newspapers are reporting a spike in mental health consultations. And, that fear isn't just physical, it's psychological. Imagine this, it's been trembling all the time. And these earthquakes come with a roar as well. It sounds like a missile that's incoming. And, people are saying Campi Flegrei is waking up. Well, it's been waking up for quite a while now. And, nobody knows why it is waking up, just to stretch a little bit or to really roar. And seismologists have emphasized that while magma has not yet begun rising, that's what they're saying, we have a magma chamber that they found very close to the surface that is being filled up by a deeper lying magma chamber. So I would call that magma rising. Of course, it's not rising further to the top that we're like immediately before an eruption. But they're saying, and they're making it clear, that this ongoing bradyseismic activity could create pathways for it to ascend. And again, watch my previous videos with all these new studies, especially, I put it in the end screen, the Achilles heel, an area where the layers are weakened and brittle, where it's easy for the magma to come through. So the seismologists are saying if cracks continue to open through rock that is weakened by hydrothermal pressure, it is not unthinkable that magma stored deeper below could eventually be mobilized. And one expert wanted to remain anonymous because probably they're scared to lose their job, probably at the INGV. I'm just guessing. But that was in a newspaper, Il Manifesto, today. So this scientist said there is no sign of magma yet, but we are running out of buffer. That means we're running out of lid that keeps it down. He said the hydrothermal system is like a balloon, blowing it up, making the crust brittle. It can only smell so much before it either vents or bursts. And that's my opinion as well. I've been telling you this for weeks and months. And he's not the only one who's saying this. Many seasoned experts say that. Experts that work at the INGV and are observing this volcano 24/7. And while all this is being said, the INGV's official position remains, let's say, cautious. They maintain the yellow alert, the second level of their 4-color volcanic warning system. It seems they do not want to use this new thing to call it like dark yellow. But there's many locals that feel this is no longer enough. They're angry. They don't care, it seems, about tourism money coming in. They care about their lives and the safety of their family members. So one resident of Pozzuoli has given an interview in an Italian newspaper, La Repubblica. He said, we don't need to be told about magma. We just want to know if we're safe tonight. Yeah. If that was that easy, the science has not progressed that far. So what happens now? Earthquakes are still coming. The civil protection is ramping up their communication. There's daily bulletins that are being published. They're inspecting schools to give people the feeling of safety. Scientific teams are deploying more ground sensors. They're using satellite and GPS. They're using gas monitoring systems to track every tremble and move and every exhale from the ground. The problem is that the seasoned scientists are also saying the magma is already in an explosive state and it could not give much warning time. That's another problem. And the big question remains, will this pressure release quietly or violently? Because Campi Flegrei, we cannot really compare it to other volcanoes. This is a caldera system, and if you see the aerial view, it looks like bomb craters. It's a vast underground pressure cooker. And its last major eruption was in 1538, which has created Monte Nuovo, like a new mountain crater. But the much larger Campanian Ignimbrite eruption that was about 39,000 years ago was one of the largest in European history, possibly even wiping out Neanderthal populations. And that's why researchers, and I have reported about him quite a lot, like Giuseppe Di Natale, have repeatedly urged caution. He works for the INGV. He said, this is not Vesuvius. This is a beast with multiple heads, not this one crater. We cannot rely on past patterns. He says, every sign that this volcano shows us must be treated seriously. And he's been complaining that since 2018, he's not being heard. He told people your evacuation plans are bogus, they will not work. Take this more seriously. Bradyseism is not normal. It only occurs before and after eruptions. Yes, can last decades, but there have been periods of silence at the volcano, and all the official entities always want to make us believe bradyseism is normal with Campi Flegrei. So what can we conclude from the current situation? The state of emergency is real and it's active. Second day of seismic swarm has continued on Campi Flegrei into May 15th. Over 100 earthquakes have occurred in only 48 hours. I think we're approaching, since May 12th, 150 or even more earthquakes. The ground is rising faster than it has in 40 years, with the exception of March. And yes, there is no sign of magma rising yet. That's what everyone says, yet, or they don't see it. But the danger of a hydrothermal explosion or magma migration increases with every day that the crust is under such stress as it is right now. And it has to be clear for everyone that lives there, wants to go there, and for you who listen to me, this is a moment of scientific urgency, political responsibility, and public anxiety, unfortunately. Italy's most dangerous volcano is under surveillance, yes, but even the best models can't predict when that pressure will finally break. That's why it's so important to stay alert, stay informed, and as always, stay on the pulse with Silky. And if you liked what you heard or what you see here on my channel, please leave it a like, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, I have my buymeacoffee.com/silky site where you can buy me coffees. Everything goes to support my farm animals. Thanks for everyone who's doing this, for your supers, and for the people that become a supporting monthly member to support that channel with a monthly membership. I'm releasing behind the scene videos and private stuff about my private life and the farm for you guys exclusive. So all the links are in the description of this video, and I hope to see you very, very soon. And in the meantime, really check out the links here in the end screen, these videos. Bye guys.